Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. We are in the afternoon edition of Bible study. We are in Hebrews. We are doing verses 1 through 10, which is actually only the first parable and is not the whole one. So we will likely wrap up the second part of that tomorrow. So there it is, the NIV, before the people get cranky. Because again, I don't think they're really watching the videos. I think they're just commenting on the title and moving on. We will get to the other versions of the Bible at some point. We will, because that's the intention. To read every word from every version of the Bible. I understand. Then they've left stuff out. 40 whole chapters from places. It's ridiculous. I know. I also want to see what else they changed. Because my brain does this miraculous thing biologically, because that's how God gifted my brain to be, that it makes these cliff notes when it hears words of the point of that message. I'm like just a natural cliff notes person. So I don't bother to read the cliff notes. I just listen to all my textbooks and stuff as soon as that was an option. Because it's the nerve endings and the eyes and the ears are all wrapped around each other. So, and I was born like that. So, I mean, what am I going to do? Use it to my advantage, because that's why God gives you gifts, right? So that you could find a way to make it work for you. So, that's part of what I'm doing. Because trust me, I am going to remember that turn of phrase was different from one thing to another. And then I'm going to wonder why, because that's why my brain does that. And then eventually I'll be able to call all this information very easily and go through and give an opinion. And if you were to take a look at the other videos that aren't related to Bible study on this channel, that are related to some organizations that have a big, huge influence on the making of the country that I live in, the United States, you would know where that opinion lies already, instead of being judgy. So, worship in an earthly tabernacle. Chapter 9, verse 1, I'm very much so in the you don't need to be in a building in particular to be worshiping God. I have little, relaxing meditation prayer stations, if you will, out there. I have a Mother Mary grotto in my backyard. Because, I admire Mother Mary. I don't know that me at 15 could have done that. I don't know. There are people in my family that did. And as a person who children was I don't know that I'm emotionally mature enough for that decision for me. That, how they manage, I don't know. Blessings onto them. So I tried just to help out as much as I can. Chapter 9, verse 1. Now, the first covenant had regulations for worship and also an earthly sanctuary. Now, it was a tent in the beginning. And then King Solomon, with heavy, his daddy basically drew it all up and did not try to build anything, but started gathering materials for him. Heavy on that. His dad basically retired and became the construction manager while his son started running the country, because it was his passion. But Solomon is credited to the construction of the temple. Verse 2, a tabernacle was set up in the first room where a lampstand, the table, and the consecrated bread. And this was called the holy place. This is back when we're in tent place, but it also was true when they were in a building. Okay? Behind the second curtain was a room called the most holy place, which had the golden altar of incense and the golden ark of the covenant. This ark contained the gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that had budded, and the stone tablets of the covenant. So, more than one object, or more than just the two stone tablets in the Ark of the Covenant, as is widely believed. Above the Ark were the cherubim of the glory, overshadowing the atonement cover. B, that's traditionally the mercy seat. So, the atonement cover instead of the mercy seat. It's not quite the same thing. atonement might be how you get mercy, okay? Atonement cover is not the same as mercy seat. Implies that you're supposed to be sitting on that seat because you sit on the seats. That's what they're for. But I think it's really for, the Most High to sit on. The atonement cover has a completely different type of connotation. I do not like it. But we cannot discuss these things in detail now, which is good because, that's exactly a different point. When everything had been arranged like this, the priest entered regularly into the outer rooms to carry on their ministry. Okay, so only using the antechamber, but that's what we call that in the design and construction world. But only the high priest entered the inner room. Okay, and that only once a year, and never without blood. So yeah, that was one of the things that those high priests had to do, those sons of Aaron, the children of Levi. So his father's prediction for him and one of his brothers was to be covered in blood, basically. It was to be bloody because they kill when they're angry. Because one of the things that Levi is noted for is him and one of his brothers, when one of their sisters was raped by somebody, went in and slaughtered the entire family. So, and I'm not stating pro or con on either one of those things, just Old Testament, just in the Old Testament. You can go look it up yourself. So, you wanted to shed blood, so you like blood. Okay, we'll give you blood. We'll give you all the blood you can handle. Because it's their job to throw blood all over that inner chamber and all over the Ark of the Covenant, all over the place. All the time. So that's their daily job when they're in there, or by the time they get to this, only once a year, because who wants to do that every day? You can only handle so much of that before it's like, okay, enough then. And never without blood, which he offered for himself and for the sins of the people that had committed in ignorance. Because the killing of these animals was animal sacrifice. Their life for the sins of people. And it was meant to give people pause, so they didn't have to keep coming up with animals that needed to be sacrificed for their sins. That maybe they would just sin less. Right? The Holy Spirit, verse 8, the Holy Spirit was showing by this that the way into the Most High Place had not yet been disclosed, as long as the first tabernacle was still standing. Okay, so as long as there was a temple like that, there wasn't going to be a way into the inner chamber, is what he's saying, for everybody else. This is an illustration for the present time, indicating that the gifts and sacrifices being offered were not able to clear the conscience of the worshiper, because it didn't. They did not feel bad that this is something they had to do, and that it wasn't working. They weren't human enough. That's the way I liken it. If you really look at what we're doing with the social, what the social norms are over the course of time, regardless of your opinion of how far or how we're doing it at this present moment, most of us would not look at the world today and go, we had a better survival rate and everybody was actually better off than we were back in the 1000s if you start looking at the actual empirical numbers and the condition of life. People don't actually want to go back to a time when they didn't have electricity or they didn't have any of the rest of these things that they have right now. They wouldn't even begin to know how to do these things that require this manual labor. They wouldn't survive. Okay, so I mean, that's the reality. And that's what part of what people got freaking out about when they start getting into focusing on those post-apocalyptic situations, is that how would they survive essentially what would be modern day dysphoria. This is an illustration for the present time, indicating that the gifts and sacrifices being offered were not able to clear the conscience of the worshiper. They are only a matter of food and drink and various ceremonial washings, external regulations applying until the time of the new order. So think of it as the Old Testament. People didn't know anything about germs. They didn't know anything about what killed people or what temperature to cook food or what you could or couldn't eat or what, any of that. They were ripped out of the environment that they had been slaves in for so long that that's the only thing they knew how to do, and were to drag out into the desert like they had survivalist skills. They did not. And some of them died in certain percentages of things. So he started with the basics of how you clean, like the need to go bathe on a much more regular basis than was what was happening. And the rest of the world, this is PC era, the rest of the world was in much the same state. Some of them actually felt that like washing is what killed you. It's like, well, I mean, and we're talking about because of immunity. I mean, we have terms now that they don't have, where we could have arguments for various things and why it was good, bad, or the otherwise. Right? I mean, because we've gone through this as a pandemic, but we have information now that they didn't have before. So he was covering the basics, but then also trying not to have them worship demons. Because the demons were everywhere. They were talking to everybody, and they were having people sacrifice and sometimes, yes, eat people's children. I know, it's disgusting. It is. I agree. God agrees. He said he never told anybody to do any such thing, because he didn't even think of any such thing. Because the average of us would not think of any such thing. That's why. It's unnatural to eat your own kind. In fact, we kind of, if you pay attention to what we actually do, even as a society, is we don't tend to even eat the things that eat meat either. Because the things that eat meat don't usually taste good to us on our palate. So think about that for a hot minute. I'm not pushing anybody to be vegetarian or any of the rest of that stuff, but it's just that level of unnatural. So, with that, let's remember that it was spiritual and physical preschools, spiritual ABC, that he was trying to teach us just to keep us alive. So it's like we're supposed to understand everything that's from the Old Testament is supposed to be secondhand. You're not supposed to need a reminder not to covet. Not to covet means to desire. For some people who may not understand, that's what it means. And the specific, it's not that you can't be like, oh, did you see that really cool advancement that they got going on over there? We could so totally use it over here. Let me go get one like it. No, that's all right. It's all right to be inspired by other people and to, implement methods that will also make your life better or easier. It's not okay to want what they have so bad you have to go over there and take it. That's really what we're talking about with covet. It's to be envious to the point of you don't want one just like that, you want theirs. And that's just weird. Because there's plenty of, of things in the world. The idea that the resources are so incredibly slim is really a trick of Satan. It's only like that if we have a whole bunch of people who insist on having more than what they actually need so they can try to fill that hole that's in their soul, but they think these possessions can actually fill. I recommend that they, go get rebaptized and put their head back in the Bible. But then that's why I'm on YouTube talking on these subject matters. Because I know there are other people out there who get equally frustrated with this world and could really use some more spiritual support system. So thank you for being mine. And until tomorrow, friends.